next Zap we want to build is a multi-step Zap that also contains a couple of different paths. Paths in Zapier basically mean conditional actions. Just like how Airtable has conditional automations, this is the same concept, but just in Zapier, named something slightly different. To demonstrate the paths and multi-step Zaps, we're going to create a Zap that will either create or update an existing contact. You can imagine a situation where a company or nonprofit puts their contact us form out on their website and they get lots of different requests from various different people. And some people might be quite eager and they might try to reach out to you multiple times. This is not an ideal situation, especially if you're trying to keep your contact list very clean. This is a problem that we see very commonly, where if you don't do any kind of cleanup or manipulation on your form data, you're going to end up with many different duplicates. What we typically recommend to clients is have a form data table where all of the form submissions come in. And if you're trying to save company data or contact data, save that on one or two separate tables that is completely separated from the form intake. What this allows you to do is for every form submission that is added, you can use a Zapier automation to check first to see if that contact already exists. And if it exists, then you might be able to update some contact information, or if it doesn't exist yet, then create that new contact. And that's where we get into the paths, right? Because there are two paths. One path is if this contact already exists, or the second path where you say this contact doesn't exist yet. Now in our Airtable database, we're going to set up a couple of things that might resemble a future intake process that you might have. So first, I'm going to start a new table called the intake form. Next, I'm going to create a table called contacts. In the intake form, you can collect some information that might be relevant for your team. To start, I'll collect the first name, last name, and email. I'll create a fairly basic form with the company name and inquiry as well. One of the things I like to do as I start the new tables and create the fields is to resize my columns as well. I will also build an intake form ID. My intake form ID is going to be the first name plus last name plus a auto number, just so that I don't have any duplicates in case people submit multiple inquiries. After I'm done, I'll create this as a form. Next, I'll open up the form and add in a test record. Once again, it's always nice to have a test record before you actually start on your Zapier. If you have no test records, you're not going to make it very easy for yourself to actually map the fields that you'll need later on. So I always recommend starting with the test record and then moving over to your Zapier. Back inside of Zapier, we can create a new Zap. And I will call this Zap to create or update contacts. In the app event itself, you're going to pick Airtable. And since inside of Airtable, every record is going to get created from someone filling in an intake form, we can set our trigger inside of Zapier to be a new record. That means whenever a new record gets added, your Zap will run. The base we're going to choose is our Zapier demo base. The table we'll trigger from is the intake form table. In this case, you do not need to limit to a view. There's another option that's called limit to a view. This is up to you whether or not you want to add this option. If you are 100% certain that all of your forms are going to come in and that's the only way someone can create a record in the intake form table, then there's no need to use a view. Often when I'm building databases for clients, I prefer to have an extra layer of caution. So what I'll typically do is set up a filter for a specific view. I'm setting up a new view called Zapier Trigger, create or update contact. I try to always name my views the same way as the Zap itself. That way it's easier for me to maintain down the road. In this particular case, I want to make sure the form is actually filled out. I might filter the records to make sure that the first, last name, and emails are not blank. In this case, nothing has materially changed in my Zapier trigger view because I only have one record in this table. However, if I pretend to be a non-technical user on the team, which we often see, people are going to accidentally create records here and there as they're working in the base. That's a very common thing. It's not very avoidable, it just happens. So it's nice to have that extra layer of caution again with the view. Now when I go back and look at my view, you can see that I'm only seeing the one record that has data in it, so those empty records will not trigger the Zapier and then lead to an error, and then I'm going to get emailed about it. So all that to say, let's limit the view to our trigger view. And we'll test the trigger. So there, we've picked up our test record, and that's looking good. One other item that we always recommend clients to do is to lock their trigger views. If you lock your trigger views, that means no one else can adjust the filters, they can't adjust the hidden fields or which fields are showing or hidden. So it makes sure your Zapier automations is going to run more smoothly. And this applies to both Airtable automations and Zapier automations. In this case, I realize I'm in a free plan, so I can't lock the view right now. But if you are on a pro plan, go ahead and lock that view. And one other trick while I'm on this topic, if you are on a free plan and you don't want to upgrade yet, or you don't feel ready to upgrade yet, what you can always do is grab a lock emoji. And add the lock emojis to the beginning and end of your view. This is another visual cue just for your team to know that even though this is not locked, you should not change anything about it because this is a trigger view. You're probably thinking that was a lot of information about just setting up a trigger. There is a lot of learned experience from everything I'm telling you. It's always from situations that we've encountered, mistakes that we've seen in the past. So, mistakes that we've seen and made in the past. So it's great to be able to share these with you.
Thanks for investing in your own knowledge base. I'm Cherry Yang, the founder of Claribase. We're going to be releasing our flagship course, Airtable Mastery, for free. In the course, you can find over 100 videos on topics like design, integration, automations, and interfaces. It's perfect for the Airtable champion who wants to build their database right the first time. You can sign up for the course at the link down below.